Hey guys, this is Maria Huard, the narrator of Precious Amber by James Fuller. I've been asked some fantastic questions by fans and listeners. James and I wanted you to have those answers, as well as a little teaser of the book, which you'll hear at the end of the video. I have always loved theater. I have a BFA in drama from Tisch School of the Arts at New York University. Since then, I opened my own ballroom dance studio, but business has slowed way down due to necessity during the coronavirus quarantine. I started exploring other ways I could use my talent to pay the bills, and I was thrilled to come upon book narration. I take a few deep breaths to calm myself and get my lungs ready to produce long streams of words, but other than that, I try not to make too much of a production out of it, pun intended, because I want my voice to sound as natural and unpretentious as possible. I've actually done both, and the jury is still out regarding which gives me better results. Reading the full book is helpful because it gives me great insight into the characters and how they need to develop throughout the book. Reading one section at a time helps me refrain from putting a judgment on the character and keeps that particular section very fresh in my mind as I'm recording, so I'm less likely to lose track of exactly what has or hasn't happened in the story so far. I do prepare the manuscript. I separate it sentence by sentence, and sometimes add punctuation as a reminder to myself of when I need to breathe or pause or change the character's train of thought. I try to set aside a good chunk of time for recording during each session. I do an initial recording, then I edit out the mistakes I noticed and marked as I was recording, then I listen to the whole chapter again as I read along in the manuscript and re-record any additional mistakes or things I don't like. It's best to do this whole process during the same sitting to make sure that the editing is smooth. For a number of different reasons, my voice may sound differently during the next session, and then the edits will be jarring for the listener. My two daughters have begged me to read aloud to them since they were teeny, and I have always treasured the time I've spent reading to them. I have read so many books that I have sort of a library of voices in my head. That's something that comes naturally to me, making each voice sound distinct. Yes, I do sometimes mix up the characters' voices. My girls would say, "Mom, that's Tanu's voice," when it was Coulter who was speaking, back when we were reading Brandon Mull's Fablehaven. I usually realize right away that I've done it, so I go back and read it in the correct voice right away. I grew up in a really diverse town and went to college in New York City, so I have heard many, many different types of voices, which have given me a big stockpile to choose from. Most voices flow pretty easily. Usually it is foreign accents that are the trickiest. I read for an Indian man in a recent book, and I had to watch some YouTube tutorials and practice quite a bit to get the hang of that one. James Fuller, the author, had warned me that it was going to be dark and disturbing, and I appreciated knowing that in advance. This is especially difficult subject matter for me since I have two young daughters. James portrayed Mr. Telock extremely well, giving the reader enough information about him and his behavior to understand how deranged he was, without going over the top just for the shock value he could have derived from going into unnecessary detail or doing more than just alluding to what was happening. I also think it's important for parents to have a healthy fear of what really does happen to some children, to keep us on our toes and make us really be vigilant about protecting our kids. I find it challenging to do children's voices. I wanted Amber and Lisa to sound realistic and believable, and not just like an adult's mimicry of what little kids sound like. I thought the dialogue was extremely well written. It can be hard to make characters speak realistically, and I thought James Fuller did a really great job of making them sound extremely real and likable. I was kind of sad that two of my favorite characters had an extramarital affair. I liked the mutual respect in their relationship, but I wish he had been officially divorced before they'd slept together. Even so, that part of the story was realistic and helped to round out their characters and make them seem more human. I really enjoyed voicing Captain Milton. His voice is most similar to my natural sound, and I really related to him. He is haunted by his past, but has used tragedy to fuel his mission to help others. He is passionate and not afraid of taking risks to do the right thing. And now we hope you'll enjoy an excerpt from Precious Amber by James Fuller, narrated by Maria Huard. Amber laid tightly curled up in the corner of the room. She trembled painfully, her small body racked with waves of fresh agony. Never in her life had she felt such mind-numbing pain. She could barely remember what had happened. It happened so fast and was so unreal that her mind could hardly grasp it. But it flashed back to her in clips over and over again, like a movie you couldn't shut off. Mr. Tealock had hauled her back into the room and thrown her to the floor. Amber remembered hearing little Lisa scream and had seen her on the floor next to her. She remembered seeing a long leather belt in Mr. Tealock's hand moments before pain cut through her whole body. Her screams had been mixed with Lisa's. She had no idea how many times he had hit them. But from the welts and bruises across her legs, arms, and body, it had been a lot. All she could really recall was when it had stopped. She had opened her eyes long enough to see Lisa being dragged out of the room by her hair, hardly conscious, and the door slamming shut. Like a wounded animal, she had dragged herself across the cold floor to the corner, and that is where she had stayed. Time no longer held meaning to her. Minutes could have passed, or days. She did not know, she did not care, she did not move. She laid in the corner, whimpering and trembling. Sleep stole her from time to time. For how long there was no way to tell, but she always woke the same, crying and trying to cover herself where she had been lashed by the cruel tongue of the leather belt. Her dress was in tatters now, ripped and torn where the belt had landed, leaving long, angry red and purple welts across her arms, legs, and back. How it hurt! Each breath and movement sent new waves of agony through her tiny frame. She prayed for it to stop, for it to end. If this was what was in store for her, she didn't want it, couldn't handle it. She almost wished she were dead. Milton pushed open the station door. It was already late, well past 9 p.m. Almost everyone would have gone home already. Only a few officers on night duty would be around, and most of them would already be in their cruisers patrolling the city. It had been a long day of phone calls and knocking on doors. All for nothing. They had gotten nowhere, no new information, no new leads. Most people had been more than willing to open their doors for a brief search. Only a handful had required a quick call for a warrant. Nearly 200 houses searched, and still the day had yielded nothing. Milton was tired and feeling defeated. He had wanted nothing more than to just go home, but he had a few things to check up on before he could finally head there. "Captain, are you there?" Maria's voice cut through the silence of the station. "Maria?" Milton asked in confusion. "What the hell are you still doing here? You should have gone home hours ago." "I know. I know, she yawned, walking over to him with a folder in hand, but I wanted to get this done as quickly as possible. It's the cross-reference you wanted from the tire treads and those who have moved. He took the folder and flipped it open. Great work! I can't believe you got this done in one day. Well, there is still one list of names for the tires to still come in tomorrow, but now I have a system in place. It shouldn't take me more than an hour or so to finish. She smiled shyly at the boastful praise. How many matches so far? 33. Milton was spiked with a wave of newfound energy and rested his hand on Maria's shoulder and gave it a squeeze. This is great work, Maria. I can't thank you enough. She blushed slightly. Just happy to be part of the helping team for once, Captain. This, he tapped the folder, is every bit as important as what these guys, he waved his hand around the empty officer desk, are doing for this case each day. Remember that, Maria. You are a huge part of this team, one that I'm quite sure I'd be lost without. Maria averted her eyes. Thank you, Captain. I try my best. Now go home and get some sleep, Maria. Tomorrow is likely to be just as busy, and I need you rested and alert with your game face on. She nodded. You best be getting home and getting some rest yourself. We need you sharp and ready to order us around. She winked. Milton waved his hand at her. I will. Just got a few things to do quickly. He marched away, lost in thought, as he entered his office and slumped down into his chair, all thoughts of what he had come to do gone from his mind as he flipped open the folder, silently praying for something he could grasp onto.